Welcome to Behind the Recipe. I'm your host, Christina Hitchcock. You can join me every week as we dive into the joys of cooking, explore kitchen tips and tricks, and share delicious recipes that will inspire your next meal. So, whether you're a seasoned cook or just learning your way around the stove, there's something here for everyone. So, let's get cooking. Today, we're talking with my friend Aleka Shunk from Aleka's Get Together about stress-free holiday entertaining. So, welcome to the show, Aleka.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, and thank you for being the very first guest on Behind the Recipe.
Yay!
Yay, we're figuring it out together. Now, before we get started, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am currently a food blogger, content creator, all the things that go under that food blogger umbrella. Been doing this for 7 years. Before I was a teacher for 10 years, and now doing obviously something that I is a little more creative and something that I love and turn into a full-time job. And my blog is Aleka's Get Together, and it focuses on easy, entertaining, stress-free, entertaining recipes, tips, ideas, and all of the above, anything that falls under that, that topic. I have two younger boys. Right now they are 6 and one just turned 8.
Aw.
And I live in Florida. And I just, I love talking about food. I have a Greek background and Yugoslavian background. So I like cooking a lot of Greek food at home. And right now, this year, we are not entertaining for the holidays, but we just came back from visiting family up north. And I was helping out a lot for Thanksgiving and did a lot of cooking and prep. So I'm fresh off the entertaining, holiday entertaining, thing. But we're gonna kind of lay low this Christmas. But
Well,
yeah,
that's good. You can sit back and enjoy those young boys and the Christmas magic that
yes.
happens there. I miss those days. So, one of the things that our listeners may not know is in the blogging world, you are like a genius at creating content that your readers want to know about. So I love that. And I love that you do that research to find out what your readers want to know and focus on that. So when she creates her recipes and shares them on her website, it's always with that in mind. And it's just such a great way to do it rather than throwing spaghetti against the wall, so to
Oh,
speak.
yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Because I mean, there's recipes that I remember when I started blogging, I was like, oh, I'm going to create this cool recipe and this unique, and nobody's ever heard of this, but it's a fun twist on this and that. And nobody was finding that. Although they were unique, but nobody was Googling that recipe. So it was hard to, what's the point of creating that recipe if nobody could find it? I mean, if you're on my blog or Instagram, I guess you can come across it, but
Yeah.
then it was like, well, I'm kind of wasting my time a bit. And then, the whole point is for people to find your content and try your recipes, and
Right.
that's the way it works with Google. So
Well, and I think too, with the holidays, we get a little more grace from the Google gods. I think more like ethnic recipes come to light, and people are
sure.
searching for things that are more traditional and may not be as mainstream. I don't know if you find that true with your site. I do find it with mine, like my Norwegian Christmas cookies or my Italian pizzelle cookies, things like that.
Yes, 100%. There's a Greek cookie recipe that is very popular around this time of year, and they are always obviously more visited this time of year, as well as a couple other, more nostalgic type of recipes that my family makes, but I don't have some of them I don't have on my blog yet. But it's my goal to get all of those recipes kind of on the blog and kind of tweaked in my favor, if that makes sense. So I have recipes that my mom has made, but I like to kind of put a spin on them
Yeah,
and make them the way I want to make them. They're not always the healthiest, like there are lots of butter and lots of flour and
for
dairy.
sure.
I try to make it a little bit more healthy so that I can enjoy it multiple times a year.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So I don't know if your family's like mine, and I'm sure these old world recipes, they're so hard for me to put on my site because they are recipes that are passed down. And like my grandmother didn't measure things in the traditional way. Like for her, a
Nobody's
cup,
grandmother does.
no, a cup was like a coffee cup. A
Yes.
teaspoon was like an actual like soup spoon.
Or like, they put it in the palm of their hand,
Yeah.
like a tea, and they'd say, "This is a teaspoon, right?" And
Yep.
you're like, "Wait a second, your hand is smaller than."
Yeah. And for a
Yeah.
food blogger, that is so hard when you're trying to get precise measurements because you know that your readers are following that recipe to the T and counting on it to work
Yes,
every time. And
exactly.
it's so hard when you're doing that. So like
It's
extend
hard.
us a
And I
little
think some
grace.
people, I mean, if you're not baking, some people are don't realize that you don't have to be exact when you're
Yeah,
not baking. You know what I'm saying? Maybe with the
right.
sauce, but everything else, you can add a little bit more garlic if you want. You can add more pepper if you like, like it's with baking, it's a different story though.
Yeah, you can't freewheel the baking powder or
No,
baking
you
soda.
can't just do a big scoop of flour, right?
Yeah, there's the science that's happening in the background that we're not aware of. Yeah. So, talking about stress-free entertaining, do you have any tips or strategies that you employ during busy times or any time really when you're entertaining, not just the holidays?
Yeah, I mean, so many tips. Entertaining is super hard, and I feel like people are intimidated by it,
Mhm.
especially when you have more than two guests over because you want to enjoy it and not feel or look stressed out. You
Right.
want it to look like an Ina Garten, right? Or Martha Stewart. You walked in and everything's all done and you're happy, and that is enjoyable for everybody. But if your guests walk in and they see you stressed, then they're not going to have a good time because they're going to feel your energy, right? So I always think that if you're giving off good vibes and good energy, that's like the first way to kind of create a just a more enjoyable, entertaining experience. And my mother, unfortunately, is not somebody who did that very well, but I
Uh-huh.
learned from her. Even, Thanksgiving a couple weeks ago, she had all the food done by 1 o'clock, like everything. And I said, wow, mom, like good job. You did, it looks great. But the last couple things she still was stressed out about. I said, Mom, grab a glass of wine, chill out. You don't want to be stressed out when people come over.
Yeah.
Everything hard work is done. So I think that's but like, in the back of your head, you have to think about food is probably the biggest concern, right? Drinks, you can have people serve themselves
Right.
or drinks are easier, but it's the food that I think can be the most stressful.
Hmm.
Um, so I guess my tip around food, first tip would be to make sure that you're picking food that you are comfortable making, not trying for the first time, right? Don't find a recipe and you're like, oh, this looks good. I'm gonna make this, tomorrow. And then you realize like, oh, goodness, either it didn't turn out right or it didn't taste the way you thought it would or whatever. Make something that you're very comfortable making and is pretty foolproof, right? And then also don't do it that as close to your company arriving as you can. Try to do at least a couple hours or the night before if you can, and prep as much in advance. So if it's like, I mean, it depends the kind of party, to be honest.
Yeah.
If it's a dinner party, that's a whole nother ball game. If it's a casual get together and you're just going to serve appetizers or some snacks and maybe a couple of casual sandwiches or some rustic pasta dish, that's a different animal as well. So and that's my jam. I'm not like having formal dinner parties. I feel like that's kind of the past, even though I love the idea of that and I
Yeah.
love people sitting down, but with two kids, it's kind of usually they bring their kids over and we're not sitting down having a fancy meal. So, to keep it more realistic, it's usually a bunch of appetizers and easy stuff that I've made the night before and either throw in the oven an hour before they come, or something that is served cold or room temperature. I have like a whole
I love that.
ebook that's free on my blog that you can download that has room temperature appetizers that are not just dips, because I know dips are very common, that you can serve and pull out of the fridge and pretend like, it
Like you
was,
slaved all day.
yeah, yes.
I love that because it's something that we don't always think about, right? We think that everything has to be perfect and it has to be homemade. So, I'm going to cook, several hours before everybody gets there. And it does, it can create that stress, that high level of stress and give you that stressful energy. But I
Hmm.
think it was Ina Garten. I loved watching
She's
the
my
Barefoot Contessa. I
favorite.
still love watching her, but she always says, something homemade and something store bought. So,
Yes. Oh, I was gonna say that. Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. She's her, and do you remember that show, Sandra Lee,
Yes.
Semi-Made?
Yes.
She did a lot of that cooking, and that I feel like is like the perfect approach to, if you want it to be more from the heart, then grab a hummus and fancy it up. Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? You have to serve it straight out of the, because hummus is probably the most popular dip that we serve because it's healthy, it's easy, and
Hmm.
it's everywhere, right, in the stores.
Right.
But you can fancy up a hummus with like a little drizzle of pesto and some olive oil and maybe some minced, red pepper flakes or garlic, something like you
Yeah.
can make it look, and fresh herbs. You can make it look like it was not store bought, and nobody needs to know, you
Yeah. Just
know?
take it out of the package and put it in a pretty bowl.
Exactly. Exactly. Or, grab some shredded chicken from a rotisserie chicken. Every grocery store sells those rotisserie chickens. And I have a dip on my blog that is cold. So you just grab that. The chicken is half the battle, right? Who wants to
Right.
be boiling chicken? Just shred it, throw it in the dip, and you serve that with, and that's also can be made gluten-free and dairy-free, which I think is super important when you're entertaining, to like serve something that everybody can eat, not just you know, the one set group of
Right.
individuals. I think that's important too. So yeah, I love Ina. I love that strategy. I think I think everyone's okay with that. Nobody's
Yeah.
gonna be like, oh my God, you didn't make this. How dare you?
You're not going to be the topic of the text message chain that you're not included in saying, did you see that Christina didn't make all of her dips from scratch?
Exactly. I actually like to do one really truly good dish, like myself, and then
Yeah.
the rest kind of just mix it up with like store bought. And people usually offer to bring something, so I'll leave room for that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think that that's a great thing to to incorporate into your meal plan for your party is that people are going to bring things. So you don't have to do it all yourself. Especially if there's
exactly.
like I'm not a big fan of making desserts, so I always put somebody else on that.
I'm not either, just because they're so easy to find in the store, and that's usually people's go-to. I can bring something dish, right?
Yeah.
They bring a dessert, cookies, and I'm totally, unless it's Thanksgiving, I love pumpkin pie. I'll make a pumpkin pie. I love
Yeah.
that. Other than that, yeah, 100%. Bring
Yeah.
it to
That would be if I was giving entertaining tips, that would be mine. Like assign what you don't like to somebody else.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. I did a Instagram post a couple months ago on this topic, and a whole blog post if you want to read. What do you bring to a dinner party or an entertain, like as a guest? What do you bring?
Mhm.
Because I think that it's difficult to read the host as a guest if you ask them like, what can I bring? And they're like, oh, well, don't bring anything. You can't just show up with nothing. That's
Yeah.
kind of like the nice,
Right.
response. But really, showing up with nothing is not really respectful, right? That's not good manners. So bring a bottle of wine or something. But there's other options that I talk about that you can bring that may not like interrupt their presentation, because some hosts,
I
personally,
love that.
I don't want you bringing something that's gonna, that I have to reheat, or I have to put on a nice plat. Like if I have all like a theme going on, don't
Right.
bring your not so good looking platter. No, but like if it's in a Pyrex or a Tupperware container, I'm not going to put the plastic Tupperware
Right.
container if it's like,
Right. Right.
so then I have to stop what I'm doing. And so you have to think about those things too. And if you're hosting, make sure if you want someone to bring something, that's totally fine. Tell them, hey, you don't have to, but, and this is from the other perspective, you don't want to, you don't have to, but this would be really nice. Or maybe like a baguette or something like that they
Right.
can pick up from the store. That would make them feel more helpful too, and like more welcome, and like they're contributing without,
Yeah.
leaving it kind of up to the gods, and they kind of make what they want to make, and who knows how it's going to turn out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I'm so glad you brought up those points about like stressing out the host when you're bringing things because that is true. As like I'm a self-proclaimed anal retentive control freak when it comes to these things, and I've thought for at least a week about what serving pieces I'm going to use before I have a party. And it's just because it's something I like to do. So I'm not doing it to be pretentious or anything. It's just the way I like to entertain and I enjoy doing that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
So I like that you brought up to consider that, like what the host is thinking and what she's doing.
Yes, I think it's
Yeah.
just a considerate thing for guests to, think about, and it depends how close you are with the host too. If it's like a close friend, like I'm sure there's not going to be any issues. But if it's like if it's your boss or somebody that you're not as
Hmm.
close with, you just have to just keep that in mind.
Yeah. So do you have any other tips for stress-free entertaining?
I would say, other than, having something prepared in advance, I would say that having something there for guests to do, especially the ones that come early, is a nice little trick to kind of keep them busy and make them feel helpful and also keep you free to do what you got to do. So like if it's
Um,
a matter of setting up the like a drink station, right? Have all everything set in a little corner. If it's like say a margarita bar, I don't know, a margarita you want people to make their own, or a picture, right? Here's the stuff. Can you just, maybe it's like a little index card, the recipe. I've done this before in the past. Because I'm not going to shake up recipes at a party. That's not really realistic, or shake up drinks at a party, right?
right.
So when it comes to things like that, I'm just going to I'll either write the recipe down and I'll have them just whip it together. If they're early, which usually there's always guests come that are early, it's usually family members. And I'll have them do that for me. Or if I have them chop up some garnish, I'll have it just like set out on the cutting board. I'll say, yeah, can just chop that up and throw it on there for me? Or like just have them help with some. It could be even like setting out some plates or napkins. I find like when I come to somebody's house, just standing there just waiting is
Yeah.
is more uncomfortable than getting in there and like I want to help as a
Yeah.
guest. You're somebody who's like, hey, like what can I do? Instead of saying, no, no, just sit down and watch me. Like, hey, yeah, if you want to, you don't have to. But that's nice. It's something that a lot of people don't do. And also I think the most important thing is when you are entertaining, have a drink ready for somebody when they walk in, because the first thing that people want to do is feel welcome. And the best way to
Right.
make people feel welcome, other than taking their stuff from them and giving them a seat, is handing them something to drink. And that could be anything from club soda to, a drink that you made, but having that ready to go is 100% important within like the first 5 minutes. If you don't offer them a drink as soon as they walk in, that's not really good hosting. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So having something ready to go, and it could be like a sangria is a really easy and really popular pitcher
Uh-huh.
drink that could be made like hours before the night before. Any pitcher margarita, I have a limoncello spritz that I serve in the summer that's really, really
Ooh.
delicious and popular, and everybody loves that.
Yeah.
So things like that are super popular. I have so many pitcher. I think just a pitcher drink you
Yeah.
know, and then people can serve themselves too. So that kind of ties in with the serve yourself. Once you serve them that drink, you can say, hey, if you want more, feel free to help yourselves. Because how many times do you run out, you drink all your drink, and then the host is busy? You don't
Yep.
want to interrupt them. They're not going to always see that your drink is empty. So feeling comfortable to be able to just pour yourself another drink is also really good entertaining, and doesn't require the host to stop what they're doing and
Yeah.
eye all the drinks the whole night. Nobody wants to do that. So
And that might be a good task for the person that shows up early. You could be like, hey, can you just, make sure everybody has a drink when they get here? If it's set up over there.
to assign to somebody.
Yeah. Assign it to
Yes.
somebody else.
Yes. That is, yeah. See,
Yep.
you're helping out with the ideas too. And yeah, no, I've done that before in the past too, usually to my sister because
Yeah.
she's really super helpful. Yeah, no, that's really, or like an older parent, like a parent or
Hmm.
grandparent who kind of, it's a very easy task for them to kind
Yeah.
of help them mingle. My mother-in-law is very very personable, and she likes doing that stuff. And she actually did that at my son's birthday party. She was making sure everybody had a drink.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
One thing I learned when we first got married, we lived in a very small house and the kitchen was very small. And when you're trying to cook for a bunch of people and
No,
everybody is congregating in the kitchen,
the
that can get
kitchen.
very
Yes,
difficult.
100%.
Yeah, so I would put the drinks purposely in another room just to kind of get people and the appetizers, just to get
Smart.
people out of the
Very
kitchen
smart.
and
Yes.
in another area
Yes.
so that I had
Yes.
more room to move.
Yes. And if you don't have another room, oh my gosh, there's tables from Amazon that are like less than $50 that are foldable, and
Mm,
they're small, and you can pop that up and put a cute little tablecloth and just set up your own little drink station, because some people don't have,
yeah,
their other room may be the living room where you're going to set it up. There's not so,
right.
but I like that idea, and I think space is a huge issue when it comes to
Yeah.
entertaining with people. So having that in a separate room will help people not congregate.
Or
Although
just
they
like
will come
away
back.
from where you're
They're going to come
preparing.
back with, yes, yes. And they'll
Yeah.
come back with their drinks and bother you anyway.
But
Like,
when they need a refill, they're out.
wait.
That's awesome. So, what are some of your go-to recipes when you're entertaining? Like the fail safes that you know they always work, everybody loves them.
Yeah. So I want to preface this with I focus mainly I started my blog off with appetizers because I love finger foods. And if I go to a restaurant, I literally could just enjoy the appetizer menu. I don't need a whole dinner, right?
Yeah,
So that's kind of the meze, the small plates mentality
right.
was where my mind was at when I started my blog.
Hmm.
Now I'm starting to include other type of more, larger recipes and dishes on it, but I will say that most of them are based around sharing plates and appetizers. So if we're going to
Okay.
go that route, which I'm more comfortable with because I have a lot of good recipes, I would say that actually I just tested one, and my parents visited last weekend. They came down to visit for my son's birthday again. And I made a shredded pork nachos, which I already
Ooh,
had on my
yum.
blog, but I wanted to make it more Christmassy.
Right.
So if you've never made shredded pork before, it's super, super easy. Just throw the pork loin in the crock pot for
Hmm.
4 hours with some stock or water. I put some onions and some spices. You can like do whatever you want with the spices, and set it to high for 4 hours and forget about it. And then all
Right.
day smelling it, it's delicious. And you can do this the day before and then shred it up, let it sit in the juices so it really soaks up that yumminess. And then at that point, once you have the shredded pork, you can hold that for a couple days, right? So
Mm.
I actually prefer to do it the day before so that it gets, the flavors really get to
Yeah.
know each other. And then once you have that, like you can put it on sandwich, you can put it on salads. But this way I did it on tortilla chips,
Hmm.
and I put I have a flourless cheese sauce. So people that are gluten-free can eat it as well. And I
Yum.
poured that over, and I did roasted red peppers and jalapenos and scallions to keep it red and green for Christmas.
Right.
Are you getting the theme here?
Yeah, I love it.
And you can do that for any, you can make these any time of year, but I was just making it more like a holiday fun appetizer. But my mom was like, these are so good, Aleka. I'm like, oh, like no big deal. Like I was like, oh, it's just, a fun appetizer that's really filling. And that's what literally we had that for dinner. We went to
Yeah.
my son's party down the street. He wanted it at an arcade, and they weren't hungry because they filled up on the pulled pork nachos, right? So
Yeah.
that is always a really good appetizer, especially like for, if there's a lot of men around, men love,
Right.
nachos, right? Kids like nachos.
Yeah.
Um, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's not as um, dainty or sophisticated,
Yeah,
right?
it's
But
not
it's really
fussy.
good. Yes, but it's super hands off and easy and absolutely delicious. So that's a recent one that I did. I will say one of my most nostalgic appetizers that I've made is that really was like one of the first appetizers I've ever made for my family on Thanksgiving. It was like 15 years ago, was a herb oil dip.
Ooh.
Do you know Carrabba's?
Yeah.
Okay, so I went to Carrabba's like 20 years ago, and I tried it, and I'm like, oh, this is so good, and I was dipping the bread in, and if you
Yeah.
don't know what it is, it's just a bunch of herbs and some olive oil, and they serve it with some bread to dip it in. It's like an
Right.
appetizer. It's very Italian, Italian.
Yeah.
And now a lot of restaurants have been doing it since then. But I was like, oh, I'm gonna make this, right? And I actually was at the point where I was gonna bottle it and sell it. Like me and my sister would order labels, and we wanted to make it like a
Right.
business. But that turned out that went down a different direction. But I liked it so much, so I made it for my family one Thanksgiving, and they were like, Aleka, what's in this? This is so good. And I did all fresh herbs. Not They do dried herbs and
Right.
kravas. Did all fresh herbs. I had a fresh garlic.
Ooh.
And just it was just it's one of the easiest and so pretty on a white plate. The
Yeah.
green and the red pepper flakes could be red for Christmas. It's
Yeah.
like just such a pretty appetizer that it's healthy, right? Unless you're gluten free, you can gluten free bread, but it's healthy and it literally people will be dipping all night. It's something that goes really good with some wine in a
Yeah.
drink. So that's
And
an
you could
easy way.
totally buy like the focaccia or the bread that you're dipping
Oh,
into it. Like you don't have to make
no,
everything.
no, no. Who makes bread? I don't make bread.
No, me either.
No one. Oh,
Yeast
focaccia.
scares the
That's like,
pants off me.
oh, I know. No, 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 no. I want to. It's on my list to make a sourdough bread, but I have not
Yeah.
yet. But no, yeah, get a good, like fresh loaf of bread. The bread will make it. And gosh, it's like one of
I
my
could live on fresh homemade bread like that with that olive oil dipping. I'd be like in heaven. I could live on that. I'd
oh
be
my,
perfectly
oh,
fine with that.
I had this delicious, speaking of living off of eating bread, this pizzeria up north in New Jersey, and they've like the best pizzerias.
Hmm.
Serve this pizza dough crust that it's like pizza crust they would throw in the oven and just make it nice and soft and crispy, and they serve it with a ricotta honey dip. So layers of ricotta with lots of honey,
Oh,
or freshly cracked pepper. The most delicious, simple, and I have that on my blog too. I threw some like jalapenos, but and if you layer it in a little mason jar, it looks really beautiful because
ooh.
like the layer of honey, and it's such a cute way. And you can do little like mini mason jars I've done so that people can dip and walk around.
Oh, I love
That's
that.
an easy and delicious dip that like I didn't think. I was like, oh, it's just ricotta and honey. What's the big deal? But it really
You know,
so
it's sometimes when you put those things together, it's like magic happens. There's a
oh my
restaurant
God.
here by me. They do the olive oil, but they take a clove of roasted garlic. So it's nice and squishy and soft.
Mm.
And then they drizzle honey over it in the olive oil. And you
Oh
just smash that garlic with it sounds bizarre,
no,
but it
I'm
is
all in.
so freaking good.
I am all in. And
Yeah.
yeah, you can do that. Like, do you ever try the garlic confit they have?
Yes.
Like it's like that was trending for a while. I did that recipe and it did pretty good on my Instagram because people are like, first of all, who doesn't love garlic? I have to say. But when you put a bunch of garlic in olive oil and
Mm.
you put like rosemary and thyme and you roast it in the oven, it gets like
Oh,
mushy, right?
yeah.
It absorbs all that and it cooks. So then it's not as pungent.
Yep.
It
It's
loses
sweet.
that bite. Then it turns sweet because it caramelizes and you can
Yeah.
spread the garlic onto toast with the olive.
Oh,
That's another good one.
I'm dying over here.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, there's so many I could share. Like it's absolutely I did one recently that was a goat if you like goat cheese, I did a goat cheese log with pistachios
Ooh,
and caramelized onions in the goat cheese. So instead of just
ooh.
taking a ready log and normally people will just roll it if
Right.
you've seen like a, crusted cheese log, this is kind of
Yeah.
the idea. But I added caramelized onions to the goat cheese and then remolded it super easy with some saran wrap
Right.
and rolled it in pistachios and rosemary. And it's such a easy, what, four ingredients there, such an easy, and it looks so pretty. It's a nice hostess gift, by the way, too. If you want to wrap it in some parchment paper with
Ooh,
some twine and
yeah.
give it to your host with like a bottle of wine. Oh, that rhymes. Then your host would absolutely love that. And they would probably put it out for everybody to enjoy. And that's a pretty,
Yeah.
gift slash appetizer. So
Oh my gosh, I could talk with you all day about this. Like my stomach is grumbling and I mean, I could just talk food. This is going to be a bad thing with this podcast. I'm
I
talking
know you're
food
gonna
all day.
yeah,
But
you gotta
before
make
we
sure that you're full when you
I
start these
know.
podcasts. Like
Right? It's
when
like
you go to
going
the
to the grocery
store.
store hungry. That's never a good
Not a
idea.
good idea.
Never a good idea. So as I'm learning the ropes here, I've got to eat before I interview anyone.
Yes.
So before we go, why don't you remind the listeners where they can find you online?
Yeah, so you can find me at alekasgettogether.com, and that handle is the same for Instagram, and I'm on TikTok too, but Instagram is usually my main place.
Okay.
And you can download that free room temperature appetizer ebook. If you go on my blog, you'll see it, or join the newsletter if you want, to stay up to date with holiday entertaining tips. Now it's obviously holiday season is in my mind, and that's free if you want to join.
And you guys have heard all the amazing recipes that she has out there. Like I can't wait to go grab that limoncello and the
Hmm.
dipping oils. So many great recipes. But thank you. And we will include links to all of this in the show notes. So you can head over to your podcast player. You could go to itisakeeper.com/BTR for behind the recipe. We'll have all the links there. But I want to thank you so much for being my first guest and joining me today, Aleka. This has been so much fun.
Congrats on your podcast. Thanks for having me. And I hope to do another one maybe next year.
Yeah, for sure. We have lots we could talk about.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Behind the Recipe. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and picked up a few tips or recipes to try in your kitchen. And if you love this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. And I'd love to hear from you. So send me your questions, feedback, and recipe ideas. Just head over to itisakeeper.com/BTR. And remember, the kitchen is the heart of the home, so keep experimenting, keep sharing, but most importantly, keep cooking.